Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro. Hey there, everyone. It's the week of April 27th to May 3rd. Another month turns over. How does that keep happening? I don't know.
Yeah.
Tali here in Seattle and Ophi in an unexpected destination.
Yes, indeed. I am wallpaper background in Miami. I just came off the Summit at Sea cruise and where I spoke twice about astrology and business and leadership. And I'm hanging out in Miami for a few extra days. So, yeah, because why not? Palm trees and sunshine are never a bad thing in my
There's
world.
there's sunshine here, but no palm trees. Actually, there is a palm tree, the Chinese windmill palm that grows in Seattle, and I
Yeah,
am
we've seen them around.
seriously thinking about getting one. Everyone makes fun of me, like you cannot put a palm tree in your backyard, but I'm like, they
Why?
make me
I don't
happy. Why
understand. I really
not?
don't. What is this? What is this anti-palm tree sentiment?
I think they're
Yeah,
like, well, they're not a native plant. I mean, like, I'm not gonna just
it's
start.
very Seattle, the purists, the plant purists. But,
I think I'm gonna get one for my sun porch because nothing makes me happier than a palm. I gotta say, I really
well,
do.
this week with Uranus transiting into Gemini last night, I mean, it's all about doing you now. So I think I vote for you having palm trees because, but that's a story for another day. Hey, everyone, let's talk about you and the
Let's talk
planets.
about Uranus, not yours, but the planet. I can
The
never
planets.
resist one of those jokes. So dad joke, but I don't know, like the ground is kind of moving but under our feet right now. All of us, like everyone around me last night was like really keyed up. I had some friends over and everyone's energy was like and my own, I was like really having a hard time focusing. I was trying to make dinner and I just could not even like figure out where I wanted to put all the different things, and I couldn't figure out how to use my own remote when we were trying to watch a
It was a
show.
chaotic surge. So just to back up here, Uranus, which is the planet of electricity, technology, innovation, disruption, change, social justice, and movements, made its once every 8 years move into a new sign, once every 84 years move back into Gemini. It was briefly there July 7th to November 7th of 2025. It was one of what we call the pendulum planets that went into a new sign for a little window to give us a preview of the second half of the decade. And now it has taken up residence since 8:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Daylight Time, whatever
On
we're on.
Saturday, April 25th. Yep.
Yeah. And it's
It's
there until
in Gemini.
2033 now.
Yes.
So a lot of things happened at 8:50 p.m. Eastern as Uranus was leaving Taurus, where it's been since May 2019, a little bit of 2018 too. And it won't be back until the 22nd century. So history has been made. And a lot of our Taurus listeners really went through a lot of change in the last 8 years, which is not their favorite thing. They like to be stable. Now it's passed the baton to Gemini. Uranus is there until 2033. So,
hmm I think
but
much
yeah,
happier there, actually.
I
But
think it will. But yeah, so I was giving my talk at Summit at Sea, and I'll share more about that later. But it just happened to get scheduled from 8:30 to 9:30. And I said, wow, during the middle of my talk, Uranus is making this historic move. And so I made sure to get there early to set up the AV. And of course, like there wasn't the right cable, and I had to run up and get my other laptop. And The remote control had a USB-C, a USB-A. I was like, is this a precursor to how technology is going to change over the next 8 years? All these plugs and things and sockets. I mean, I don't think, again, Uranus ruling electricity and technology and all the AI stuff that's taken off. We're moving into the age of air, and I think it's going to look as archaic as like an 8 track or
Mm.
VCR in a couple of
Well,
years to
so
have all
many
these outlets,
inventions, we talked about that on last week's podcast, come to life during, especially audio visual
right?
inventions or communication tools. The first computer was here when came, it was
Wasn't the
1,800
word
square feet.
computer,
Yeah, the word computer and the word teenager were used for the first time during the 1941 to 49 Uranus and Gemini
which makes
transit.
sense because Uranus also rules youth and, teenage energy. It's the ruling planet of Aquarius. So the Tauruses, the Geminis, and the Aquarians. This is a really historic moment. But let's talk about a Taurus and a Gemini who got
Yeah, who
a Uranian surprise last night in the
or
White
not, or
House
tried to
or
pull one over our
staged.
eyes.
Yeah.
Yes, Melania and Donald Trump. She's a Taurus, he's a Gemini. So while Uranus was passing the baton, there was an alleged shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You know, at this point, everything just feels like a staged reality show. So,
Yeah.
eyebrows are raised, and the fact that, like, I mean, there's all these videos circulating of the Secret Service rushing people off. There's one I saw of RFK Jr. basically being rushed off and leaving Cheryl Hines, his
Oh
wife,
my God.
kind of
Wow.
running to catch up. Like, there's other ones of like the men kind of encircling their wives, but
Ugh,
Bobby Bobby didn't do it. Bobby didn't step up to the plate.
that says everything.
There's so many people that we've gotten into it with who are like Maha fans. I'm sorry. I mean, we went on a misbegotten podcast in the summer of 2024 with a manosphere dude whose name we will not invoke,
But
but
he's a Gemini.
when we were promoting our astrology advantage book, and he was buddy buddy with RFK and saying he's not buyable, and
I know. I remember I just was like, something just came over me. I was like, I think it can be bought. He was like, no way. He's like the most honest guy ever. He's not buyable. And I was like, mm-hmm, sure. So yeah, here we are, 4 score and 2 years
he's
later. But
RFK Jr. is a Capricorn, so he's a Capricorn man, you know.
sometimes they come with a price tag. It's true.
But
And
yeah, this
yeah,
whole thing, it just like everything just feels scripted and like the theater of the absurd right now. There's like footage of Pisces Cash Patel just, sitting there. I mean, who knows? And then this
wow.
coordinated response across the, conservative social media influencers. This is why we need a ballroom. And Donald Trump even made his speech about that. And, funding for the ballroom is on the line right now. So it just, I mean, whether or not this was real, we've reached a level of cynicism now around like where we don't know if anything is real or not.
And
So,
this is going to continue with Uranus and Gemini because Gemini is that duality. And so it's is it or isn't it? And it's going to impact, we're going to see a bigger divide between corporate media and independent media, and, a lot more fact checking, which we're already doing at, you know, I don't know, a rapid pace at least, is going to be needed. So, yes, Uranus is in Gemini, and at 8:30 p.m. or 8:35, 15 minutes before it transited out of Melania's sign of Taurus and into the sign of Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Victor Orban, so many Geminis. It's the shooter, whether he was real or not, came into the building. So the only thing about that that's wild, whether they staged it or not, is that Uranus transits have brought shooters and mass shooters. Like I've found a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the shootings happen when Uranus was that we've seen have happened when Uranus was stationing out of retrograde into direct motion or changing signs. And I have taken to, I hate saying anything that scares people, but I have taken to sometimes warning people to watch out for erratic behavior during a Uranus transit. So it is it is kind of on brand for a Uranus transit nonetheless.
I know it's true. And, like whatever the case, the chaotic media cycle is probably going to get even more insane. I mean, the Lego videos that Iran is putting out are just like, they are pumping those out. Like, there's one about Cuba with like this sort of, Cuban jazz sound where they're talking about the night the lights went out, how all, the US turned off the power in Cuba. I mean, they're basically just like,
Shading
history
and
history lessons, but like coming from a bizarre autocratic source. So
yeah.
it's like
Which is
prop
also very Gemini, the duality of
right. It's like
everything.
thank you for these Lego videos, but I wish but you're a troll.
Yeah. Well, also, it's, the neuroscience of it all, Uranus and Gemini. Gemini is the mind. So I think we're going to really start to get into neuroscience even more. And if you think about it, novelty is what stimulates dopamine and keeps us addicted. So as we start to expect things like the Lego videos or even some of the independent journalists that once shocked us, I think those are now going to become pattern normalized, something we're used to. And I think people are going to stop paying attention to that too. So it's like we keep cycling through these dopamine spikes and then we get used to it and we're on to the next thing, on to the next thing. So it's very unsustainable in every format. And I don't know, I'm curious to see what this new Uranus and Gemini era brings about with that.
I mean, flying cars are already going to be tested out in a few cities, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was in China actually. So,
No, but there's some US cities that they're
oh,
going to
wow.
be
Okay.
testing them
I've been
out.
on a boat for a few days and a lot happened. I mean, most of the people didn't even know about the White House shooting because they had shut off their phones and were just enjoying being on this cruise. And then I was like, well,
There's
wow.
really nothing to know. It's just another, I
Yeah.
mean, like, oh my God, it
I
just feels,
turned on my phone afterwards and I saw a text from you and James from our team, like, whoa, this is what happened with
I
Uranus
mean,
transiting. Yeah. But yeah, it's,
I
and then it
still,
was a non-issue.
there's still a percentage of me that thinks when, Cash Patel made that note at Charlie Kirk's memorial, see you in Valhalla, that he's in New Zealand in a place, in a witness
Oh,
protection
God.
program or something like
Hmm.
that. Because I just don't, this is the thing about Uranus and Gemini, the duplicity, the duality is going to be just insane for a little while
Because it was in
here.
Gemini when he was shot last September. Yeah. It
Oh, yeah,
was briefly in
right.
Gemini. Yeah.
During Charlie Kirk's
Yeah.
assassination. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, who knows? Because some mysterious truths may come to light though this week. Because
Thanks
on
to them.
Friday, May 1st, May Day, we have the Scorpio full moon, which we're born with moon in Scorpio. So this is our full moon. I always loved the Scorpio full moon. It's like we used to do our retreats in Tulum back in the day under the Scorpio full moon when Tulum wasn't overtaken by mega hotels. And it is a very spiritually
Cartels.
connected moment as well for all of us. And Scorpio kind of gets a bad rap, and so does Gemini. So let's make sure that we reframe the Uranus transit in a positive light as well, because there's a lot of opportunity in it. And the Scorpio full moon. Scorpio is about bonding, the kind of powerful, deep, transformational connections that only come when you bare your soul and you have the kind of trust that gets developed over time.
And it's
And
very emotional, very spiritual. So Gemini is very mental and heady, and a lot of people are feeling kind of exhausted from just being in their heads so much. And they're wanting to connect to their body and energy and flow. So, especially since Saturn and Neptune have left Pisces, now they've been gone a couple of months, and we don't have that water energy. The first half of the decade was very watery, earthy influenced, which is more yin, feminine flow. That's why we saw so much healing of trauma and focus on, uh, connecting and plant medicine and psychedelics. But now we're moving into a lot of air and fire energy, which is very
yeah.
yang and masculine and fast moving.
Well, speaking
Yeah.
of fire, uh, we have a fire festival in a way, because not the fire festival the scam that took place on the island with Ja Rule and whatever that guy's name was, the New York dude who scammed everyone. But this year, Beltane, which is a Gaelic festival marking the start of summer and peak of spring fertility. It's always on May 1st, but it corresponds with the Scorpio full moon. So it is a fire festival and signifying kind of that incoming warmth and life blooming. So while there's all this insanity and death and war going on, I like that there's this alchemical Scorpio full moon, this transformational Scorpio full moon coming in with Beltane this year. That doesn't happen every year.
Hmm.
And it's actually the flower moon. The May moon is called the flower moon, according to the Old Farmer's Almanac, which sadly is in its last year of publication.
Oh,
No more
yeah.
Farmer's Almanac after this year, which
Well,
is
there's a different one that will still be, but the
okay.
old, I think one of them is retiring publication it was around since the 1800s too, I believe. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's it's a good Friday to get together with friends and do some sort of ritual for fertility, whether that means, sprinkling it onto one of your creative projects or I mean, I'm like, duh, that's when I'm going to plant. I've got a bunch of dahlia and gladiolus bulbs for my garden. I was going to put them in this morning and something just didn't feel right. So I know what
Save
my
it for the full
Beltane
moon.
ritual is
I
going
mean,
to
I don't know
be.
what the Farmer's Almanac says about planting under the full
I'm
moon
supposed
and
to do it
not.
under a new moon, but you know what? I think it'll be okay. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
That'll
it's
be good. And Scorpio is transformational.
Well, you could gather together with friends on Friday for the Scorpio full moon and do one of the classic Beltane rituals. One of them is making like a wreath of flowers, a flower crown, not the Coachella variety, but kind of, but not. And you're actually supposed to create a fairy altar, an offering for the fairies with flowers and sweets. It is one of those days of the year that the veil between the earth realm and the spirit realm is specifically thin. Now, with all the craziness happening in the world, I would definitely do a little bit of a protection ritual too, because I don't know. I feel like there's all sorts of spirits hovering in the ether right now. We're at such an interesting turning point in the world. And Scorpio energy can, you know, bring shadows and light. So there's some
Heard mixed.
extremes.
There are mixed reviews out there on fairies because some I personally have never gravitated to fairies since I was a little
They're actually
girl.
not really, they're not these Tinker Bells and
Yeah,
the,
they're
the
supposed to be
actual
kind of
fairies.
mischievous. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you mess with the fairy realm, like you better be prepared for some mischief making. So I'm gonna go with angels and guides
Oh
personally,
no,
but
this Pisces guy I dated once, we went on a Beltane walk and
of course you did.
yeah, of course it was his idea too. And we
Naturally.
made an offering to the fae, the fairies, the fae. Even just going on
Well,
a nature walk and scooping up some branches or bringing the outdoors in, doing
our
like
friend Dina does these crystal wand workshops, and where you glue hot glued crystals and flowers onto a wand and everything and
I have two
branches. I
of
thought it
them
was
and I
really
love them.
cool.
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
mine
that was a
sitting
great
next to.
exercise. Yeah, she just went out and found a branch, and then yeah, you can go pick things up and then put them on the altar, right? Well,
Hmm.
maybe you don't even have an altar. An altar is a great thing. You know what? Our friend suggested to me something I haven't done in a long time, a God box, which of course the word God is, triggering to some people. Everybody is all of these words, and this is very Uranus and Gemini because Gemini rules words and vocabulary and communication, whatever word speaks to you. But it's basically just getting a box. I got a little $3 necklace box at a gift shop and just put some things that I was carrying, trying to solve with my mind into this box and was like asked the universe uh, to resolve it for me. And I had forgotten about that. I was really overthinking and overanalyzing a few things and going to do some public speaking. So there were things to let go of. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't have to carry this. I can just say, there's already a higher intelligence that's working this through, and let's just get a little assist from there. So at the Scorpio full moon, a God box, an altar, something like that, where it's that infinite power. That's what Scorpio is really about. So if whatever way that speaks to you could be a really great uh, exercise to just let go of control and give it over to another force to help and support
And
you.
making some kind of a physical, a tangible representation of whatever those desires and dreams or, you know, the energy that lives inside of us. It's a reminder. Like every time I look at my crystal wand, I actually have happened to be with Dina for two
Oh
workshops.
yeah.
And so I have two of them. I keep one behind me when I'm working on the sun porch, and the other one I have in the on the mantle in my house. I got this. I don't have a fireplace, but I found a fireplace mantle from a house that was over 100 years old at a salvage place and installed it. So it's just a
Yeah, it
decorative
does
thing,
look
but it's
cool. I
awesome.
always wanted one of those. Um, Another thing that you can do is a collage. There was a woman named Wilka on the Summit cruise, was a death doula, but also she did a guided collaging.
Death is very
Yeah,
Scorpio.
death is
Yeah.
death and rebirth, though. It's like
Hmm.
it's not senseless killing and war, which we feel having all this Aries energy, but it's death, rebirth, allowing something to take on a new form, reincarnations. So uh, she was saying that collaging, which is something that I knew, but I really liked the way she said it. She's like, when you make a collage, you create a separation between yourself and whatever the issue is that your system or
Hmm.
soul or emotions are trying to process. So when you put things into a tangible physical object, like you were saying, it gives you that little bit of distance and space. And I think we're all going to start to realize just how much we've been carrying. I think we know it intellectually, but we're going to probably feel it in our bodies and our spirits this weekend with the Scorpio full moon. So find a way to get that out of you.
Water rituals too are good, like
Yeah.
a bath.
Sound healing too, but or maybe listening to sound, toning, as they call it, sound healing while taking a bath or putting your feet in water. I'll put my feet in the ocean. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's just we're going to have to kind of live in these dual realities. I mean, it's like Uranus and Gemini. Gemini is the twins. There's a duality. There's a split. Like, and it's been feeling this way since more and more since last year. Now, Trump being a Gemini, it's going to be interesting to see how this impacts him. We do, at the end of the week, have some grounding energy coming in. Mercury, which has been in Aries and it rules our mental state. Mercury is kind of our communication, our intellect. Uranus is our higher mind, our third eye, the pineal gland. But Mercury has been in Aries, very feisty, snappy, fiery, kind of aggressive, combative. It's moving into Taurus on Saturday, May 2nd for 3 weeks. And I think that's going to hopefully bring maybe some of these negotiations that just aren't happening. Pakistan trying to bring together Iran, the United States, and Israel to some sort of ceasefire. And as soon as a deal is supposedly struck, it's violated within minutes. It's just, there's been so much Aries energy going on. We've had last week, we had the new moon in Aries and 7 planets in Aries,
well,
and
both the United States and Israel have Uranus and Gemini in their
they're
charts.
having the Uranus return,
Yeah,
which is a moment when you can be either awakened to the evil genius in you or also asked to rise up and be more focused on community. We have to remember that Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. So Aquarius is can be that kind of cold alien science energy, or it can be the humanitarian, high vibe, communal hippie energy.
idealistic. Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk about universal basic income, but both of us came into contact with people. You were talking about universal basic assets, and I heard. I think it was a weekly show, yeah, with John Stewart. He had somebody on. These
Hmm.
two MIT economists who are really great, talking about how AI is going to impact the economy, and they were talking about UBC, Universal Basic Capital, and
Hmm.
the premise behind that is that governments actually own the stock of larger companies and then they distribute shares to citizens so that everybody has an ownership stake. So you don't have these giant companies and these three, technocrat billionaires who are getting government contracts and tax breaks and hoarding all the money and deciding who can work and who can't. Okay, you don't want us to work, but then we get no ownership. So, the
Yeah, that
world's
came up
the
a lot too. Like the whole idea of, well, if you just give people the fish of the income, and then we're like, well, just go on and do something. I mean, the human spirit starts to erode there with no creativity, no
and
decisions,
And not
no
just that,
say.
but then you have like this feudal
Yeah,
system from the medieval period where you have these fiefs, these, land barons, and everybody else is like a serf and a peasant, you know,
getting their little
dole
crust
on
of
their
bread.
dole. Yeah. So that's not what we want happening here. But wartime can create those types of contracts that make a few people rich. Now, we've mentioned this last week. Uranus and Gemini has dovetailed the last few cycles with major wars here in the US, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and World War II. So, the robber barons all, got wealthy with the railroads after Civil War. So right now, I mean, we're seeing this happen with these AI contracts and Palantir, which is owned by Libra, Peter Thiel, and Alex Karp. I don't know his side, but they
Libra.
both
It's Libra
Libras.
too.
Wow, the
Yeah.
Libras are just like good and bad. You got
Yeah.
like there's some real
Got
like un
Netanyahu, Putin, Malay.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. The Libra, the
Zoran Mamdani. Yeah.
off balance Libras, no bueno. So, anyways, Palantir just got a $300 million contract from the USDA, which is so, Taurus ruling the
Backwards.
farmland at the end of Uranus and Taurus. Taurus is the land, and so now what does that mean for farmers? Are they going to be surveilling and having control of all? They now have this lens into what farmers are doing. And we know that a lot of farmland is, being bought up for AI data centers. They also Palantir, and there's just some if you've watched any of the videos of Alex Karp and Peter Thiel talking about the Antichrist and just destroying the enemy, and they're the ones responsible for the exploding pagers that Israel, you know, did in Lebanon. Was it in Lebanon? I think it might have
Yeah.
been. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, they do a lot of drones and war equipment and war surveillance. And they're also up now as Uranus goes into air sign Gemini for a major FAA air traffic control project contract. So they're getting all, Donald Trump Jr. and, Eric Trump have a drone, have invested in drones. So, the it's all tied to this same old, billionaire grift. And it's just, I don't know, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, said Mark
Yeah.
Twain, a Sagittarius. But it seems like it's with astrology, when you track these cycles, it kind of does repeat itself, you
Well,
know?
yeah. I mean, well, that was the topic of the almanac section of our 2026 horoscope book. So a lot of you already have it. But if you don't, we are still selling copies of it. But as I mentioned, alluded to, I just spent the last 3 days on a cruise called Summit at Sea. It's part of Summit series, which is it's been described as Ted meets Burning Man.
It's an
And
apt description. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a lot of founders and innovators and uh, investors, tech company owners, marketers. It's very future-minded people, 2,500 people all coming together on a boat and lectures on everything from psychedelics to biohacking to astrophysics to consciousness, AI, everything. So fascinating next generation people. So I gave two talks, one on leadership and one during the Uranus transit on Saturday night. My talk was from 8:30 to 9:30, so Uranus transited at 8:50, and that one was on the astrology of business, wealth, and impact from 2026 for 2026 and beyond. So a lot of what we were just talking about, I did some further research on and talked about the cycles of business and what's ahead for kind of the Aquarius economic cycle and this Uranus and Gemini one that's starting. The North Node is going into Aquarius. This happens every 18.6 years on July 26th until March 26, 2028. So I ended up having a room full of people who are all in tech and investing and sustainability spaces, AI, really trying energy. There were a lot of people who were in alternative energy and some of the most interesting uh, sectors of that too. Like a lot of people who are developing solar and microgrids and that sort of thing. So what came up and some of it was what was really cool was that I looked at some of the research Tali and I've been doing for our books over the last few years and what's happening now, and made some speculations about what might happen. For example, Gemini is very localized, and there's a lot about, neighborhood microgrids and smaller systems of resources or fractional farming where people own
Mm.
a piece of land and farm it together, co-housing, a lot of different living models. And got a lot of affirmation from the people in the lecture. It was more like a lecture conversation. I always like to try to make stuff fun and invite people to share. There's a lot that came up for artists because there are a lot of artists too about not building platforms or celebrity, but actually building ecosystems where maybe fans also own some equity or artists own some equity instead of just
UBC for art. Yeah.
yeah, that was
Mhm.
we talked about how that could be
Shared
mapped.
ownership is really very
Yeah,
much what I
a
think I see
big
ahead for
thing.
that. And especially the Leo South node being
Yeah.
art and as well as wealth, you know.
Yeah. So we really looked at like 2026 to 2028 being a time of when the North Node's in Aquarius and things sort of become more distributed. Aquarius is the water bearer, so it's like all the resources are kind of poured out and shared or need to be.
Mm.
Regulations come in. Sometimes that does impact. People were really, of course, wanting to know if the AI bubble was going to burst or so. But the Leo North Node, which happens every 10 years too, 9.3 years, is when we sort of have a gold rush mentality, but then things pop. So, what I looked at was like 2017 to 2018 was the last Leo North Node. And that really set the stage for what we're moving into now. That's really catalyzed also by Uranus and Gemini, it was the first ICO, initial crypto offering. It was
Mm.
when Facebook and Microsoft and OpenAI really started developing breakthroughs with machine learning. And that all actually set the stage for what we're going into. The next Leo North Node kind of gold rush is 2036 and 37. And the hypothesis that I put out was it would be a solar gold rush. And
Mm.
that, yeah, so energy would maybe be the new kind of gold standard for backing currencies and that kind of thing. So we had it was very fun to talk
Cool.
about that. I mean, during we had before the dollar, which was minted during a Leo North Node, there was the first failed currency of the colonies at the same time when Uranus was in Gemini in 1776. They had the Continental and they overprinted it, caused massive inflation. There was counterfeiting. And so the financial cycles have followed astrological cycles. We've talked about this on a couple recent podcasts, but I've traced it all the way back to the first colonists in Jamestown who arrived from England. It was 144 Englishmen came to find gold and ended up dying of starvation the next winter, even to the point of having cannibalism because of
Oh,
that,
right.
until they figured out how to replicate or steal the tobacco seeding from the Native Americans. So there's such a astrological through line with history and where we find ourselves now. So with Uranus and Gemini, I think it's kind of like with great power comes great responsibility. We could, one of the women in the audience pointed out something that you've talked about a lot, but I didn't put in my slides about Uranus and nuclear power and uranium. And so the 1940s
Mm-hmm.
was a time nuclear power was devastating. It was used for harm with, the bomb.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oppenheimer and
it's true. But,
Hiroshima.
I wrote about this in 2022
Yeah,
as, actually, I think it was even earlier than that, 2021,
yeah,
when Jupiter and Saturn were both in Aquarius. And as we're moving into these planet
mm,
Pluto and Aquarius, because nuclear energy, when contained, is actually a potentially clean way of powering up factories that can build all the solar panels. The problem is with wind and solar is that we don't have all the equipment that we need. I mean, my ex-husband Corey works in solar here in Seattle, and he's an Aries, so he's always been like kind of mad scientist with that. But they when Trump came into office, his company really had to scale back tremendously. I mean, they're doing better now, but China is like way ahead of us on solar. They are like
Yeah.
flying
Well, we
cars,
don't have the
solar, in
infrastructure, and that's
electric
what we
cars.
need. Yeah.
Yeah, but nuclear power actually is a way that we could potentially um, build all that equipment without a ton of carbon emissions, because obviously
Mhm.
environmental concerns, which just seem to be like so backburnered with all the insanity. I mean,
It's
it's
pretty amazing how AI is just, I met
like,
someone who like buys data centers. I was like, well, don't ruin the planet. I was joking, but not. And I was just like, yeah, that's cool if you find an alternative source of power, but it's just like, oh
what's the
God.
water too, and a
Yeah.
lot of people. This is an interesting Uranus and Gemini thing that happened was Claude Anthropic, which everybody moved over to. A lot of people did
From
after from
OpenAI.
OpenAI, since Sam Altman who's a Taurus. They moved
Triple Taurus.
they moved over to Claude, and then Claude like released a new version that was like significantly less sophisticated, and it just started churning out AI slop and every
Yeah, I was like, what happened? It's like everyone got on board with Claude, and then Claude just like, is it
tur-
like, is Claude like the Claude you dated, the guy who, like, the minute you actually want him back, he starts underperforming because, these AI models are like some of
well,
the
it's
crappy
probably
guys
because
I've dated in the
well, they're
past.
constantly training. So if everybody moved over there, like they probably got flooded with a bunch of like stupid questions and people uploading
Mm.
stuff. And then it just, that's the thing, and one of the I love this was on also on the weekly show, Jon Stewart talking about it this last week. And it's something we've talked about before. And he hadn't even realized this, probably because, and I don't know how, but maybe because he hasn't been a publisher. But what we have to remember is that these large language models that AI are trained on are the biggest copyright infringing, intellectual
Yeah.
property stealing. I mean, they have taken all the world, all the art and wisdom and creativity of humanity over time and pulled it into their systems. And now some of them are trying to say, oh, this is proprietary.
Wow.
So it's not like these are sentient beings, like even though it seems
We'd
like
love to think that, but they're
it's they're
not.
not.
They're
They're
just, yeah.
recycling, they're learning. I mean, incredible pattern but it's all pattern recognition. That's all that AI is. So it can only come up with like
It's unoriginal. It's actually the
it's not.
originality comes from humans, and the AI is like fast mirroring it back. One of the keynotes we did for the Break the Patterns Summit that we were part of, which we'll also be sharing the replay for. It was an incredible summit on innovation with women, and our talk was about AI and intuition because they're both pattern recognition systems. Your subconscious mind makes 95% of your decisions and sees shortcuts everything into patterns from millions, billions of neurons that fire off in your brain, heart, and gut. And AI is just an external, your intuition just happens to search within you and your memories, emotions, and body. And AI goes out and creates vectors and searches everything that's out there and then pulls it into an answer. Just like when you're wondering, oh, should I or shouldn't I go out with that guy again? Just for an example, what's happening is you're doing what you would do if you asked Claude or ChatGPT, but you're searching your own inner database and it's giving you an answer back based on just as many biases and past already pre-existing things. So, mindfulness is going to be such an important thing to cultivate, especially in the rest of this
And I,
decade into the
yeah.
2030s. Yeah.
Very, very air, very
Hmm.
mental. Also, I think where originality is going to be found is offline. What can
Yeah.
people produce together in community as we move into the Aquarius North Node after July 26th? What happens when we put our devices down and, put our heads together? The telepathy tapes, which record the experiences of nonverbal autistic people and the way they communicate with each other. They all go to a place called the Hill and they don't even need to be embodied.
Yeah.
They kind of go into a
That's
meditative
right.
state and communicate with each other. And they were able to kind of
So
type
cool.
these out on devices. It's incredible. I've listened to like about
It's
five of
so,
the
so
episodes a
cool.
while ago and then got
And there's a woman who works with autistic patients who was on one of the astrology podcasts I like with this astrologer Pam Gregory, that they are really into the Comet 3i Atlas, and that's sort of a beacon for them. It was really cool to
mm.
see that all coming together. But
Yeah, there's also
exactly. We also need to be embodied too. So,
yeah,
we mentioned
exactly.
human design and, it's sort of like somatic astrology. It's the planets in your chart linked to the I Ching and then mapped onto the energy centers, the chakras, 9 chakras, not seven in the human design system, and then connected by channels which are aligned with the Kabbalistic tree of life. So, when we experience astrology in our bodies, we have to, I
Yeah.
think that's going to be our defense against what you described with that plagiarism and theft of
Mm.
human creative capital or whatever you want to call it, our souls. Gen Alpha, I realized in 2028, my daughter's the first year of Gen Alpha, 2010. She was like Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They're going to be graduating high school. The first Gen Alpha in
Mm.
2028 when the North Node is leaving Aquarius. So they're going to lead us into the future. And a lot of them are just really shutting off their phones and wanting to do very hands-on,
I mean, Sibel
retro
started
things.
making painting like
Yeah, she
doing
started
like
doing
nail
nails and
art. Yeah.
sewing and like putting kind of like metal studs like on a sweater. She wants to learn how to sew. They're doing Depop where they're getting quote unquote vintage clothes, but they're really just our crappy fast fashion. But the point is, I
Yeah,
think
there
that
was
they're going
a
to really make themselves undiscoverable by these pattern
they
finding
don't want to be.
predators.
Yeah, I mean they are the children of Facebook parents who put their every move as a child on their timeline. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of Gen Alpha's like, thanks a lot for like using me as your prop, mom, even though that's not what Gen X mothers were totally trying to do. It was just what everyone was doing. But it's like they
Mhm.
didn't really get a choice. They got thrust onto social media before they even really had a choice. So I
And there were
think,
so many like scandalous YouTube family shows like that Ruby Frankie one.
oh
Oh my God. I
God.
mean, we're not even going to go there, but like
Well, I'm reading
that
a
was Uranus and
book. I'm
Aries.
reading a book by Molly Crabapple. Here Where We Live is Our Country by Molly Crabapple. And it's about the Jewish underground resistance movement pre-World War II, the Bund. And I feel like those kind of, it's like they made the pamphlets, they met, they kind of did work, like they were all about workers' rights in the beginning. So they would go undercover into the factories and like, and I think that's going to be a real thing that we see happening with Uranus and Gemini, people wanting more eight and especially in this Aquarian energy, Aquarius North node, like labor and
The
organizing and
people.
unions and different ways that people organize around power. I actually didn't
An
realize.
information capital too. It's like messaging, power. Yeah. I mean,
I actually didn't realize that Karl Marx was Jewish
oh, wow.
until then, and so was Trotsky. So
Mm.
a lot of the original communists
Labor movement,
were
socialists.
of our people, but like the Red Scare, the anti-Semitic Red Scare that happened in the United States. But
Might have been
yeah,
Uranus and
it was the
Taurus,
end. It was
1934 to 42.
no
Was when,
1947 to 54 was the
oh, yeah.
McCarthyism one, and then
Yeah, that book became an instant New York Times bestseller. It was definitely heavily promoted, but it's but also very Uranus and Gemini that, Jewish community is splintering and fracturing, not just along Zionist versus anti or non-Zionist Jews, but just in more voices, anti-war, and it's we're going to see that in a lot of communities. Not the Jewish communities going first, or maybe doing it the most publicly, but I expect to see that over the next 8 years, a lot more fragmentation.
especially with human design. Next year, we're shifting to this new 412-year cycle with the cross of the sleeping phoenix. And we did say we
Mm.
were going to also tell you what the human design gates are that are getting activated by the sun each week. These are centers in the body. So Monday, we're finishing out the gate of caring, and that's in the sacral center.
Yep. So it's been very much about like kind of nourishing ourselves, really connecting to intuition, gut led kind of energy. And then we're moving into the gate of rationalization,
Yeah, which is in the ajna, the third eye.
which is more mental thinking. I like those sacral gates because we're born with those. But yeah, it's we're moving back into our minds again, which is very Uranus and Gemini coded
It's
as
very,
well.
very Scorpio full moon coded too. It's kind of turning over, like, let me think about these mysteries of life and see if I can it's about making sense of things that might
Mm.
be harder to access because the third eye is kind of, this is where these spiritual downloads come in, but what do they mean? How do we make sense of
And the
them?
people I know who are born with their sun in that gate, like Lily Allen, for example, I mean, she's a great example of being such a wordsmith, which that verbal part comes
Mm.
from that uh, thinking, rational mind, but how she writes about things and makes her lyrics and tells stories is very much like that very sharp, observant, like nothing gets past her kind of
Oh my
ways. So I think she's a
God.
good poster child for that.
West End
Yeah.
girl, incredible. She's a Scorpio South node too, and she has
Okay.
Saturn and Pluto and Scorpio. So yeah, she's got
Yeah.
that's edgy dancing on the edge of things,
Hmm.
being open-minded, but also getting herself down
Drawn to
slippery
danger.
slopes, erotically, substance-wise, all of that. So, special announcement for Seattle area, Portland, Vancouver, anyone in the Pacific Northwest. I am doing a live in-person event on May 5th, 5 at 5 p.m. at Likelihood Boutique and Shoe Store in South Lake Union near the Amazon Spheres. Um, and it is a spring astrology forecast. I'm going to talk about what's going on for each of the signs, answer your astrology questions, and you can check out the wares, little shopping party, decorate some shoelaces. We're gonna have there's like gonna be a cute
Fun.
little lace bar there, and
Mhm.
just come hang out with some amazing people. I'll be there, excited to meet you and bring your cosmic questions. And so that's 5 Cinco de Mayo at 5 p.m. So I'll drop that invite in the show notes. Also, still have some spring reading openings. Although we're backed up for a few weeks now. Yeah, so astrostyle.com/readings if you want to get on our calendars. And it's been so great meeting so many of you for that. All right.
Yeah, wishing everybody a powerful Scorpio full moon, a grounding entry into Uranus and Gemini. If things feel a little unstable or shaky this week, just kind of slow down and let that energy integrate. Had all the technology breaking. You had all the parts of your house and
Meditation,
everything.
breath
Like,
work,
yeah, just
air
breath
type
work,
things,
fresh
breathing.
air, anything
Yeah.
like that you can get. Just like breathe it in and stay calm. So we will see you next week.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Astro Twins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.